Today on our 2017 Jayco Redhawk Motor Home, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Front Anti-Sway Bar, part number RM-1139-176. Here at eTrailer, we do see a lot of motorhomes, and one thing people may not realize is when we're going down the road, we have a giant windscreen here that's going to catch a lot of that wind. So when we're driving and that gust of wind comes, we're going to feel it in the steering wheel, and we're going to have to fight that to keep the wheel straight. Not only keep it straight, but whenever we do turn, it's going to have a lot of sway and kind of lean into it before we even get to our turn, which a lot of drivers may not feel comfortable with that. Well, that's why all these suspension upgrades are going to help not only make the ride better, but give us a lot more confidence and take away some of that fatigue when we're driving. On the front here, the upgraded sway bar is going to give us a lot more control, and again, it's going to take out that fatigue where we're not going to have to fight the steering wheel so much, and we can enjoy our ride. So here's what our sway bar is going to look like once we have it installed. Now this is going to be a lot bigger than the factory one and give us a lot more of a stable ride. Whenever we're driving down the road and we make a turn, you kind of feel that swaying feeling. Well, this is going to prevent that from happening as much. It's going to have more of a rigid feel, so when we turn, it'll actually turn rather than start leaning first and then go into the turn. Our new sway bar is going to use polyurethane bushings, which is going to hold up really well against any kind of road grime or anything like that, but they're also going to give us more of a solid mounting point, opposed to the rubber ones that come from the factory that kind of have more give to them and they're a little bit more mushy. These aren't going to be so hard where it's going to be an uncomfortable ride, but they are going to give us that stiffness that we need. As far as mounting our sway bar, it's going to use all the factory mounting locations and the factory mounting hardware, so we're not going to have to drill or cut anything in order to get it in place. This is a custom designed sway bar, so it is designed specifically to fit our motorhome. But not only that, they took into account that it's also going to work with a lot of aftermarket parts like we have here with our steering stabilizer. So I got my new sway bar laying down on the floor right by my factory one. To show you just how much of a difference there is between them, our new sway bar is going to be much thicker, and it's not going to flex as much, giving us a lot more stability. To begin our installation, you're going to want to get to the front of your motorhome, and our sway bar is going to be right here, right in front of the axle and all the suspension here. And we're going to have a few different points that it's going to attach at. We're going to have this clamp that's going to attach to the frame on the bottom, and then if we follow the bar over, it'll attach to the end link right here. Now we're going to want to take the nut off of the end link so that we can eventually get the bar out. So you're going to want to grab an 18mm socket or wrench and come from the outside. We're going to loosen it up, then we can take it off. Now sometimes the end link will start spinning when you go to loosen up the nut, but it does have two flat spots on here. So if it does start spinning, you can just get an 18mm wrench and hold it there while you're taking the nut off. Now we're going to want to hold on to the hardware because we are going to be reinstalling this with the new sway bar. So now that we have this one off, we're going to go ahead and take the other side off as well. With the end link nuts removed from the sway bar on top on each side, we're going to come back to them and we're going to loosen the end link nut on the bottom. We don't want to completely remove it, we just want to loosen it up some so we have a little bit of wiggle room when we go to pull it out. You can see it's already going to give us plenty of room to move everything around, but now we can start working on removing the two bolts holding our D brackets onto the frame. Now these are also going to be 18mm, so we can get that 18mm socket, and we're going to have one on the front as well as one towards the back of the vehicle going around the bracket. Now that this one's removed, I'm just going to put it in a couple threads just to hold it a little bit. That way I don't have to worry about the sway bar falling down when I remove all the other bolts. The bolt on the back side of both of our brackets are going to be a different size. So we're going to want to grab a 15mm socket, and then we can pull those out. And this is exactly why we left those bolts in, because although it did drop down, it's not able to completely fall out. So we'll remove the last bolt on each side. And when we have one side loose, we can swing that end link out of the way so that it comes out of the sway bar. And I'm going to kind of rest it on the tie rod here, that we don't have to worry about stretching so far to reach the other side. We'll remove the bolt. And we're going to pull the end link out. And then we're going to pull the entire assembly out and set it down. And we can get the new one ready. So I got my new sway bar laying down on the floor right by my factory one. As far as the install goes, this is going to make it a lot easier for us to figure out where our bushings are going to go, because we can line it up pretty close with where our factory bushings are, and we can put them onto our new sway bar. So if we take our new polyurethane bushing, we can take some of the provided lubricant. You want to make sure you're wearing gloves because you really don't want this to get all over your hands. We're going to spread it on the inside of the bushing. That way it makes it a lot easier sliding it onto the sway bar. Just going to get it all on the inside there. It is a split bushing, so it's going to open up, and we'll come close to where it lines up with our factory bushing. We're just going to open it up and then push it onto the sway bar. And if we're not exactly dead on, that's what that lubricant's going to help with. It's going to make it real easy for it to slide on. And it doesn't hurt to put a little bit on the outside. We'll go ahead and put the other one on as well. Now we're going to need to remove the old factory clamps off of the bushings. Now this may be a little bit of a tight fit, but if we just push down on both sides, they should pop off fairly easily. Now when we go to put them on, you need to keep in mind of where the mounting holes are. We're going to have the large one that goes towards the front and the small one towards the back. So we'll slide them right over our new bushings. That way when we put our sway bar in place, they'll be in the correct spot. You just take your bracket, I'm just going to slide it, push down, and when you're putting them on, if the tabs are facing away from you, you want to have the large hole facing away also, because these are going to get rotated and go up into the frame. That way we can have our large bolt in the front and a small bolt in the back. Now for all our bolts, including our end links, we want to take the included Loctite, and we're going to put just a small amount on each one of the bolts. So you want to do this before we put our sway bar in, because you really don't want to have to take the bolts out to put the Loctite on then. So with an extra set of hands, we're going to lift our sway bar into place. We'll line up our brackets. I'm just going to get the bolts loosely started. Just a couple turns so that it'll hold itself up, and we can get the rest of the hardware in place. So we'll put a little bit of Loctite on the threads on our end links. And since we still have a little bit of wiggle room, it shouldn't be too bad to get those through the sway bar. And you want to make sure you put the smaller bolt in as well. Just a couple turns, make sure everything's just kind of loose right now so we can get everything in place, but it's not going to fall down. After we have our end links connected and we have the nuts in place, I'm going to come back with that 18mm socket, and we're just going to snug them up. We'll do that on both sides. Now we'll come back with that 15 and 18mm socket and tighten up the brackets that are holding our sway bar to the frame. With all of our hardware snug, I'm going to come back and I'm going to torque down all the hardware to the specified amount in the instructions. We're going to make sure to repeat that, but keep in mind and double check the instructions for the ratings on each bolt, because the front one, the rear one, and the end links are all going to be different. So with all of it torqued down, that will finish up our install. But one last thing I do want to mention, if you're going to be using your sway bar in conjunction with the reflex steering stabilizer, you definitely want to put in your sway bar first. That way you can check all your clearances and make sure that that reflex steering stabilizer is going to fit. That'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster Front Anti-Sway Bar, part number RM-1139-176 on our 2017 Jayco Redhawk Motorhome.